My name is Charmaine Williams. I'm a professor at the Factor-Inwentash Faculty of Social Work at the University of Toronto. And the Family Caregiving Project is a project that I am doing to look at how families live with mental illness and how they deal with the caring issues that emerge in their family because of it. It includes different components. One component is the Family Mental Health Cafés that had us traveling around the province and talking to families and service providers. Another component is interviews with families. And a third component is a survey that has gone out across the province that gives people the opportunity to talk about the things that they're dealing with, the hopes they have for supports for families, and really just how they're making things work. So I'm Charmaine Williams. I think I had a chance to say hello to all of you. And I want to thank you so much for taking your Saturday morning to join us to talk about what I think we all agree is a really, really important issue. How people live with the experience of mental illness, what becomes the new normal for people, what supports people in the healthiest lives that they can have, and how family mental health is supported. The reason that we call this a cafe is not just because we have provided coffee. It is called a cafe because there is this method of bringing people together called the World Cafe. It's called a World Cafe partly because it's a sort of global movement about how do we bring people together to talk about things that matter to us, right? So the idea is that you're going to bring people together to answer questions that matter. The project that we're talking about today, the Family Caregiving Project, is one that I started because after many years of first working in the system and then doing research on these issues, I could really see that there were a lot of issues that families dealt with that weren't really being talked about in terms of thinking about the whole family unit. And while we often focus on the individual who's diagnosed and what's going on with their illness, there's this whole other story that's really not told very well about what's happening in families and their own mental health in terms of their ability to deal with what's going on. So from your perspective, as somebody who's part of a family, when you hear this idea of caregiver, care receiver, what does it make you think of?
So we feel like when we're in these situations, we tend to feel isolated. We tend to feel like people don't understand. So we feel like we lose friends, family, we lose opportunities, not just the person with the diagnosis, but also the caregivers. And I feel like we sacrifice a lot.
Lines of communication being open, discussions being open, and the acceptance of the illness and the path that they want to take, or that the change of path.
Accessibility, understanding, as well as education. Ensuring that the doctors and stuff like that have the information that's needed as well. Because we have people who have found out their own resources and let their doctors know what's out there for us to deal with. Stability of programs. Being able to see a counselor and not have to 6 months down the road change to a different person to talk to, because that ends up being a trigger for a lot of people as well.
Part of what brought me to this project in particular was because I was working with families who were living with this when I was in the mental health care system as a social worker, and then later even as a professor. So many of my students had family members that were diagnosed with mental illness, and when I was in a role where I was providing a lot of student support, I really noticed that a lot of them were providing a lot of caregiving to siblings, parents, friends who were affected by mental illness. And that really is what got me thinking about how responsive is the system to this kind of person who is supporting a family member but not recognized in the usual role of primary caregiver. And then also because of the age group that you see in the university, these would often also be people who were dealing with their own mental health issues. So how does the system respond to the fact that there are people who have their own issues with mental health that are also trying to support other family members who are dealing with either mental or other types of illnesses? Increasingly, people are being affected by long-term illnesses, both mental and physical illnesses, and chronic illness has an impact on the individual and the people that care about them. And I believe that we need to think in new ways about how we support families, the entire family, when somebody's affected by a long-term illness. So thank you very much for giving us your Saturday morning to spend time with us. This project around family mental health, obviously near and dear to my heart, but has been rolling out, and we've had some marvelous experiences with other people around the province. We're looking forward to having another marvelous experience with you this morning. Really is about looking at the whole family in terms of what's going on. Something that was a bit different about what we were doing is that we brought it down to just 3 or 4 questions that we're really asking people about what works, what doesn't work, what kind of help they need, what kind of things they wish were in place for families. Another thing that was different about what we were doing is that often when we're doing work around caregiving and families, we have family members together as a group and we talk to them about what's going on. Sometimes people bring together people that are diagnosed with mental illness, but actually that's fairly rare. And what we wanted to do in this project was have a group that was a mix of both people who were diagnosed with mental illness and the people that care about them.
Having a loved one suffering mental illness is probably one of the most difficult things any family can go through. It is not a person disease, it is a family disease, because one person is identified as the patient and everybody suffers. The only thing that I can say is if anyone ever has a loved one that is identified as having a patient, having a mental illness, contact a friend that really understands. Reach out for peer support, not just the professionals. You need to be around people who understand what you're going through. None of us can do it alone. We have to have help because it's too negative. It'll drain us. It'll pull us down. You have to be supported by peers.
The more I talk about mental illness and the struggles that I face as someone who's had mental illness and a family member has faced, I think I feel better, and I think the word needs to get out there so that stigmatization is lessened. There's no other better way than hearing the stories of people who are affected by mental illness.
I think it was actually just nice to just hear other people's stories, their family members and their own personal mental health stuff and whatever. So I think any information that I receive that may relate to me and somehow is therapeutic and healing for me. There's just something, being here today has been really, really great and a therapy for me. It's been just, so thank you for that. And thank you for allowing this to be the venue that we could all get together. And
So my name is Joellen Forbes. I go by Joelle. My background as a student, I started here doing my Master's of Social Work. And within the first couple of weeks, actually, I met Dr. Charmaine Williams. And I started working with her. And then this project came about. And for me, I was like, whoa, this is amazing to talk about family mental health, caregiving. I have lived experience, but also at the same time, I have a limited view of how caregiving looked like. And I thought this was this project was very transformative.
When we were putting together these cafes, we would reach out to service providers in the area. And the Canadian Mental Health Association was quite helpful in this regard because they have locations in many cities across Ontario, and we were interested in Ontario. And so we would reach out to them to first talk to them about what was going on in their communities and whether this was something that might actually be useful in terms of things they were doing with families. And so we did outreach to various community agencies. The Canadian Mental Health Association was very helpful in helping us get the message out that we wanted to do this kind of work, and we often collaborated with people in CMHA agencies across the province. And they helped with recruitment. They also helped on the days. We were often fortunate to have somebody from the agency actually in the room with us that helped us with the process. Also because they were hoping to learn things about what was going on in their community with their families as well. So we really wanted these cafe events to be useful to the agencies we were working with as well. So even in the immediate experience of doing the cafe, sometimes you were getting things that were actually quite useful for the agencies in the first place. As I was saying to Carla before, this is a very special cafe for us. When we first started talking about doing these mental health cafes and when we sent out sort of to the province, Kenora was like one of the first people to say, yeah, we'll do it. And they weren't originally on our list because I'll be honest, I didn't quite know where Kenora was, I'll be honest. But what a great opportunity. First of all, as I was saying to somebody, when you say Kenora, everybody's like, oh, beautiful, such a beautiful place. So I'm glad I finally came to see this beautiful place. But also I think that what you're working with here is very different than what we're going to see in Toronto and other places. And I'm really interested and eager to have that be part of the story that we eventually tell about this project.
So the first cafe that I attended, I think, while I have heard families talk about many similar themes over the years, I think what always sticks with me, and that's what I found quite impactful, was how families connected with each other. And how even after a few minutes, families started talking about feeling more hopeful, just being able to have a space where they can talk to each other, where they can see that there are other families who are living through similar experiences, where they can share some of the things that they have done to be able to better cope with difficult circumstances.
One of my hopes for this project on a systemic level is that it will update policy development and current legislation that we have, community programming, enhancement, family mental health literacy, and essentially, with all said and done, have people see themselves in other people's stories. I feel like so often people feel like, am I the only one going through this? Am I the only one who's gone through this crisis? Am I the only one who's finding it so difficult to find a psychiatrist? Am I the only one who experienced maybe harmful assumptions by healthcare providers or harmful assumptions by friends and family? Am I the only one that's experiencing stigma? And I felt that each story that people brought into the cafe was actually going to help someone for tomorrow. And I feel like that's one of my big hopes, that it will help people see themselves in other people's stories.
I'm a big general society kind of person when I talk about things, because I think that's where it really all has to happen. And I just wish society as a whole would, be more considerate, more accepting of people with mental illness, but also embrace the families, because they're going through it too. And they're struggling sometimes as much, if not more, than the person who has the mental illness. Sometimes we have, supports we can wrap around the individual who has mental illness, but then what do we do about the families?
You can't give up. That's the main part. Families have a struggle, and they might have a son or a daughter or a mother or a father that are having an issue, but I can honestly say that I am proof that things can go from bad and they can turn around.
Ultimately, big thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you shared today. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for coming and telling your story in hopes of helping other people who are going through something similar. I promise you I will do my best to get it out there to people who need it.